one last thought on this one is, and it touched on something, Emily, that you mentioned before about sort of big kind of categories of fraud like account takeover, synthetic identity fraud. I do actually have some hope that we're going to get a little smarter about how we do this thanks to the rise of like social engineering and scams, right? So a huge part of the sort of fraud challenge today, and I think the FTC just came out and said that last year, 2023, Americans lost something like $10 billion to fraud. And in 2013, it was like 1.6 billion. So the problem is getting like massively worse. And a big contributor to it is social engineering, tricking someone into authorizing fraud, authorized push payment fraud, that kind of stuff. You see it with Zelle in the US. You see it with a lot of different kind of authorized payment schemes in the UK and elsewhere. But the thing that I think is really interesting about it is it has pushed banks and fintech companies, Emily, kind of in the direction you were saying of like, let's have a much more nuanced and sort of granular user experience where we're not going to say yes and we're not going to say no. But what we're going to do, because we're a little suspicious of this particular transaction, is we're going to introduce all these little points of friction into the experience. And like the very sort of simplistic version of this is the bank going like, here are all the boxes you have to check because this could be fraud and this could be whatever. But there's a much more sort of gamified and sort of subtle way to do that where you can just sort of change the checkout flow or you can change the transaction flow dynamically because you're a little bit suspecting it might be fraud and you just want to make the hill a little steeper to climb up before someone gets to the other side of it. And there's so much room there to kind of re-architect that experience to, I think, sort of give people more time to sort of manage fraud or to think before they click the checkout button or whatever it is. And I think a large part of how we deal with this is just going to be a more sort of subtle, dynamic, in some ways gamified experience to help consumers and merchants and other people in the ecosystem just have a little more friction or time to deal with some of these challenges. That seems like a part of it as well.
I totally agree. Although I will say that you do need a big change in infrastructure on the back end to be able to do that.
You do, hence why this is a good possible investment thesis.